The government of Cameroon has denied responsibility of unaliving civilians following an attack that occurred on Sunday, 26th of April 2026 in Zeranyam, a locality in Jakiri, in Biya division of the northwest region of Cameroon, where 14 people were killed, including separatist fighters. Initial reports from eyewitnesses indicate that the military entered the community when there was a festival ongoing and started shooting indiscriminately after having heard that the festival had elements of the dreaded separatist movement operating in the northwest and the southwest region of Cameroon, who have been advocating for the separation of Cameroon and the return of the then southern Cameroon, what they are now captioning as the Ambazonia. Earlier, the civilians indicate that among those killed were also civilians that were unalive, and many condemnation came in because many had thought that this attack was simply based on the fact that civilians were not on the scene. But the civilian population that witnessed this attack came out to say that when the military were tipped that the festival that was ongoing had some elements of separatist fighters, they immediately swung into action, and when they came, they started shooting indiscriminately, and that led to the unaliving of some civilians alongside separatist fighters. The fact on the ground, initially on the images circulated by Cameroon's defense and security forces, indicate weapons confiscated from the operation and from separatists who had been killed, and also on the bodies that were spotted on social media. Families and those concerned raised an alarm that among those displayed by the government of Cameroon as separatist fighters, that they are civilians who were attending the festival that was ongoing in Zeranyam. However, the government of Cameroon, through the spokesman of the military, Serge Atonfak, has come out to say that the attack, which many are claiming that civilians were part of those who were unalive, including separatist fighters, that nothing like that took place. According to Serge Atonfak communique that was released yesterday, which happens to be the 30th of April 2026, indicates that the operation that took place in the early hours of Sunday 2026 never saw the unaliving of civilians, that those who were unalive, all of the 14 persons unalive, were members of the dreaded separatist fighters, and that those stating or eyewitness accounts or within the community indicating that those who were unalive are not all of them are separatist fighters, that is not true. I will read out the communique where Serge Atonfak articulates. But however, before I read out the communique, Cameroon's government is noted for having backtracked their position on some key issues, especially regarding the unaliving on civilians. Some of the regime barons who did not wait for the military spokesman Serge Atonfak to give the official statement quickly jumped on the principle of relativism. Some said even if civilians were unalive, it is still not an issue because to them the military based its operation on relativism. That is, they saw that separatists were there, and the only means to get these separatists out was to launch that attack, basing on relativism, that if they don't, the separatists will leave that event and virtually start hunting military later. However, the spokesman of the military has cleared the air, but this is now raising a lot of questions, as many are pointing out to a series of incidents that have occurred where the Cameroon security forces have backtracked their initial response, which they had earlier stated that the government forces did not unalive civilians, and later changed their position. A case in hand was a viral video that emerged in 2018, purported from Zevert village in the far north region of Cameroon, where it was seen how a member of Cameroon Defense and Security Forces, or alleged a member of Cameroon Defense and Security Forces, unaliving civilians, women and children in the far north region. That was in 2018 when that viral video surfaced. It is believed to have been taken between the period of 2014 to 2018 in the fight against Boko Haram insurgency. On fact, on the ground, the Ministry of Defense at the time when that video came out in 2018 rejected the claim that Defense and Security Forces did not take part in the unaliving of civilians and maintained the fact that these men are professionals in executing the attacks. The Minister of Communication, then government spokesperson Issa Chiruma Bakari, came out to say that that incident, which many are pointing fingers at defense and security forces, that it operated or it was carried out in Mali and not in Cameroon. After much pressure, BBC did a documentary showing the geographic location of where that incident took place, matching satellite imagery and coming out with undisputed facts that it is a Cameroonian territory that that incident took place. It was then that the government of Cameroon launched a formal inquiry and some soldiers were arrested. Up to 2020, that these soldiers were now sentenced to 10 years in prison for misconduct. Another incident that occurred in Cameroon was in 2020, that same 2020, while some soldiers were being sentenced for that viral video. In 2020, 14th of February, the Valentine's Day massacre, there was an incident that occurred in the northwest region of Cameroon. In that northwest region of Cameroon, in the northwest region of Cameroon, civilians were unalive in a locality called Gabu. Gabu is located in Du subdivision, in Donga Mountain division of the northwest region of Cameroon. Civilians were unalive. Close to 20 to 23 civilians were unalive, including a pregnant woman, and 13 children were part of those unalive. When this came out, initial response from government spokesperson Issa Chiruma Bakari and some government officials, including all top relevant offices, indicate that the defense and security forces are not responsible for the unaliving of that number of civilians in Gabu, the northwest region of Cameroon. They blamed it on explosion and separatist fire, that the separatists returned fire that led to explosion, a fuel explosion as a result of separatist fighters. However, pressure started mounting. People rejected the assertion, and in April that same 2020, between 20th of April 2020, Cameroon's President Paul Biya finally listened to the calls of civil society organization for an independent audit be done in the Gabu incident. And when that was done, the government had to backtrack that yes, civilians were killed and some military officers were pointed to have been responsible, were arrested and court-martialed. And in February of this year, 2026, the military tribunal in Yaoundé sentenced those responsible between 5 to 10 years in prison. So with this incident occurring again in Jakiri, which is in Burundi division in the northwest region of Cameroon, many are saying that there need to be an independent inquiry to look into this issue, because some eyewitnesses and residents of the area insist that some people that were unalive were civilians. A case in hand is Ya Sala. Ya Sala is a woman whose husband was killed by separatist fighters in that same area. For the husband has refused giving support to the separatist fighters, and the husband was unalive by separatist fighters. And in this attack, she too has been unalive. And according to that communique of research at Tonfac, it means that she is a separatist, and this is not sitting in well in the minds of those in that locality who know this woman fully and fairly. According to the communique of research at Tonfac, it says that the Ministry of Defense hereby informs in the early hours of Sunday 26, 2026, following a tip-off from the population that the locality of Zeram, Nyam, Jakiri subdivision, Burundi division, northwest region, the aim of the operation was to neutralize dangerous terrorists from various factions who were united under command of the self-styled General Capo and preparing violent attacks in the region. As the infiltration platoon approached, the heavily armed terrorists opened fire in an attempt to halt their progress. Members of the defense and security forces responded appropriately and professionally, neutralizing the terrorists. The following outcomes were recorded: 11 male terrorists neutralized, all bearing Commander Hassan and Commander Fuki, all under the command of the self-styled General Agum, commander of Free Man from Kikaikom and in Kumbu subdivision, Burundi division, under the command of self-styled Capo and Commander Dangote, an explosive technician specialized in explosive device who has been wreaking havoc in the region. 3 female terrorists who were logisticians under the command of the alias General were neutralized. And it further says that several military weapons and accessories, 12 improvised devices were remotely controlled detonations were also recovered. The tightening of controls at the surrounding road junction by the Defense and Security Forces with assistance of the local population led to the arrest of 2 wounded fugitives. They are Diaka Priestley, 16-year-old bodyguard of the Sedo General Capo, Linui Mirabel, partner of the aforementioned General Capo and chief of the justice officer, who was responsible for transporting and the group weapons concealed in bags of fresh food. The latter was already wanted for acts of terrorism. Combating operations are ongoing in the area to locate, apprehend other fugitives. Finally, the Defense and Security Forces are determined to increase their efforts to find and neutralize outlaws.